A Sparkbird experience is that magical moment. It's when you're in the right place and the right bird shows up at the right time, and all of a sudden you are a bird lover for life.
I heard blue jays and was kind of instantly transported to like my parents' backyard.
The Sparkbird for me was the sandhill crane.
My favorite bird today is the black guillemot.
Roger had his Sparkbird experience right here in Jamestown, New York. He was an 11-year-old kid. He discovers this tree, and on the side of the tree is a clump of feathers. Tiptoes up as quietly as he can, and he reaches out his finger and actually touches the bird. And it turns out that it was a northern flicker. And if you know anything about northern flickers, in the east they have these beautiful golden underwings. So when he touched the bird, it was startled and it flew away in this burst of golden wing beats. And so this 11-year-old kid just stared up at this big, beautiful golden bird. And as he shared the story, that changed his life forever, sparked a lifelong passion for birds.
And after that, he just would start sketching, and it was sketching birds. His first job with a local furniture company, and early on in his job there at the factory, the head artist pulled Dad aside and said, you know, you've got some real talent here. You should pursue it.
A working class kid from Jamestown saved up his pennies and then moved to New York City. For 5.5 years, he studied at two of the most famous art academies in the city.
It was on one of the forays with a friend of his to the New Jersey marshes. Dad was complaining about the fact that there was no book to identify birds with. There just wasn't something they could use that wasn't a heavy tone. His friend said, well, Roger, you have all the skills. You know, you've got the information, and you certainly have the art skills. You should do a book.
So the first Peterson Guide was published in 1934. The first 2,000 copies sold out within a week. It was reprinted 3 times in the first year alone. And then since that point, over the course of several different editions, sold upwards of 15 million copies worldwide.
It's really exciting. When you look at the original 1934 field guide, you can really see how Roger created this revolutionary thing, especially as an artist who was looking at the world in a different way. All of the birds in the guides are painted instead of photographed, so Roger really captured the essence of the birds rather than just a portrait of the birds.
I can remember just being amazed when he'd have something up on the easel and he was sketching out field guide plates, how he could do the feet of birds. And there was an economy of motion there that was just extraordinary. It was just a few, strokes of the pencil, and all of a sudden it was there.
And then he had arrows pointing out field marks, which are distinguishing marks. So when you only have 5 seconds to try to identify birds, I'm looking for that beak, I'm looking for that thing, I'm looking for that thing. I think that it awakened a natural instinct in people to have a closer relationship to the natural world.
He has a brevity in mark making that you would never guess when you look at the detail work of the illustrations in the guide, right? To give you an idea, he has these very brief notations of line, and I'm not kidding you, you can tell in the course of a stroke the difference between a merganser and a Canadian goose. I think that's brilliant. He approached this idea of bird illustration as an access point, more than as an ornithological study. This institute represents a connection between the legacy of his work and the importance of the conversation continuing.
The mission of the Roger Tory Peterson Institute is to act as a living embodiment of the field guide. We do that through sharing exhibitions, through sharing information about Roger's life and his career, and through nurturing the next generation of nature artists.
Being an artist in residence was invaluable to my career. Seeing an artist who was doing something that affected the entire planet, making it a better place, having this resource that it's right at your fingertips is sometimes the start of many bird artists' journeys.
Like Roger Tory Peterson, I kind of just want to go around, look at birds and paint, draw them. Birds are kind of lovable and kind of cute and just makes me happy when I want to see them.
I think RTPI is absolutely an inspirational place for young people in particular. I think it's very, very, very easy to feel lost in our current climate situation, and a space like RTPI helps build hope.
It's also a place where you can draw whatever words you want.
One of the most profound outcomes of the field guide is that he created an entire generation, or actually generations, of citizen scientists. Because all of a sudden, think about it, 45 million people who now know birds, and they like to go out and they like to count birds. And with this massive data set, then we can actually better target our restoration efforts to help the most amount of critters.
Well, I think he always thought of himself as a teacher more than anything else. I think that's the thing he would take the most satisfaction in, that passing along of his interest in birds, and then having it expand into an interest and appreciation for the overall environment. And then you could expand on that. So get yourself a good field guide, and I could recommend one if you wish, and get a start.
The Peterson Field Guide and the Roger Tory Peterson Institute, sparking a lifelong love for the beauty and wonder of the natural world. Discover your spark at the Roger Tory Peterson Institute in Jamestown, New York.